live at Villa Volkonsky, which is a very short distance from them. I'm delighted to say that the British Embassy is represented with us here in the room tonight, as well as friends and others from Europa Now. And so let's make a start. Sabir came here from Skopje this morning. I came here from London this morning. We weren't quite sure who was going to arrive first, but it turned out to be you, yes, because my plane was delayed. But I have to say,
for one time I was earlier than you.
You were ahead. When I got off the plane, eventually about 10 o'clock this morning, when I got off the plane, and I'm sorry to start on such a sad note, but I think it's important to make this point. When I got off the plane, I was immediately contacted by a team in London to give the terrible news about an attack that had happened in Manchester, England today, on a synagogue on the day of Yom Kippur, where Jewish worshippers were murdered, and the murderer has been shot by the police and is dead, but Prime Minister has called back to London for a meeting of the Security Committee. But it's just, again, an utterly contemptible act, but a reminder of how challenging and how difficult and how dangerous our times are. And I think it's very, very important for us to send a message from here, I think, to say that to repudiate hate and such acts of extremism. And we are seeing more of these acts of hate and these acts of extremism. What we stand for is democracy and human rights. And people want to have their lives protected, and they want to have their rights protected, and they want to live in societies that are a safe space for their human rights and where they feel safe. So an attack like the one that we saw in Manchester is an attack on all of us, and we stand in solidarity with the Jewish community in the UK and around the world and utterly repudiate these contemptible acts. And we remember that there are contemptible acts going on today as a result of what is happening in the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. We remember the journalist Victoria Rashidska, who we spoke about on our podcast just last month, whose mutilated body that had been tortured in prison for her trying to tell the story to the world about what's really happening on the front line and in the occupied territories and so on of Ukraine. These are all equally, utterly contemptible acts. Well, I don't think there are degrees of evil, but I think one has to make the point that these are being committed not by individuals or terrorist organizations, but perhaps the Russian state is a terrorist organization, but with the full power of the state that is waging war on Ukraine to get territory, not just to get territory, but to exterminate people, to eradicate Ukraine from the face of the map, to wipe out the love of freedom in the hearts of people in Ukraine, and to take away not just their lives but the very memory of a free and independent Ukraine. And it's very important that we organise, that we wake up and that we organise and we try to do what we can and we stand up to this. We're doing this event tonight as part of our commitment, our passionate commitment to supporting Ukraine and the freedom of Ukraine and the freedom of Europe. But don't feel that you have to, if you're watching at home, that you have to organise an event like this or anything else, or write a book or publish a book. Any small act of solidarity is incredibly valuable and important. And I am often humbled when I speak to people, friends of ours in Ukraine, or my fellow director of New Europeans, who's one of the initiators of this, one of the partners in this initiative, who is a journalist. And I say, really, is there anything that we can do that really it makes a difference? It's so awful what you're experiencing, and it's so humbling to speak to you, and I really feel helpless. And she always says to me, Roger, whatever you do means so much to us. Every gesture of solidarity makes so much to us. So thank you to those of you who are here tonight at Cafe Sant'Animi. Thank you to those of you who are watching this from home. Please stay with us. Please support our work and the work of other organizations supporting Ukraine. And please take a little bit of time now with us this evening as we have the first in our series of presentations of our book, Defending Democracy and Human Rights. I'm going to ask Sabir to present the book, and then we'll have a response and some comments from Eric, and then we'll open it up for comments here from the floor. And we look forward to seeing your comments online for those of you watching it. So, thank you very much, and with that, over to you, Sabir.
Thank you, Roger. Let me first join everything you said with my full heart and mind. And indeed, what we see across the world and the latest appalling attack in Manchester is that things start with a post, with a word, with a coded language, and they grow and grow, and the hate kills in the end. So we must know that people who are sitting at home and typing toxic words and sentences, they help the dark forces kill innocent people, wherever they are, whoever they are. And we must know that whoever, in the spirit of what you just said, whoever takes action, even the smallest one, it is very important. It helps preservation of democracy, preservation of peace, of peaceful life, of normal life. And that's why it's very important what every single one of us does, writes, or says. It is important to remember that. And I think that these motives were the driving force that brought us today here, and with this book that we wrote together. And let me here mention the other people very important, equally important to the creation of this book. It's Wolfgang Gressmann from Media Dialogue from Germany, and Heather Robertson from Virginia University, United States of America. And of course, we need to mention that this book and all these recommendations that are here in the first part, in the first 66 pages, in 10 chapters, are very good, very invaluable, I would say, contributors in the conference we organized together in December last year. And those are, amongst many others, Mika Beuster, the leader of the Deutsche Journalistenverband, the German Union of Journalists, one of the largest one in Europe as such, and many others, including diplomats such as Erwin Fouéré and the German ambassador Petra Drexler, and many others who were part of this work that we finalized in March this year, and now we're starting the European tour of presentations. We must not stop here, Roger, not only in gatherings like this, which is wonderful, which is attended by distinguished ladies and gentlemen, but we also need to tell our viewers, our audiences, our friends, our colleagues, our families, that now is the time that we need to preserve, to protect, and to defend democracy. It's sad to say that we are now defending democracy. It wasn't so long ago when we were promoting democracy and human rights. Now we are in times when we need to defend it, and we need to do that. This book is also online. Actually, there are very few copies like this, physical copies on recycled paper, of course. But it is also online. It's promoted by Defending Democracy.global website, also on the media platform of Civil. I invite every organization or individual, for that matter, to share this link of this publication take quotes of this book, share it on your social profiles, and comment on it. Even if you're sharp and disagree with anything there, that's actually the democracy and the spirit that we want to promote. And these 10 chapters are, and here I will finish for the time being. In these 10 chapters, we worked very hard to bring actionable recommendations. So with an emphasis on actionable, all these things that are written here in the first 66 pages, they're doable, they're actionable, they can take place in our lives, in our everyday lives. The only thing that is missing there is the will, the political, but not only the political will, it's the will of people, of individuals, of groups, of communities, of authorities, of think tanks, such as the one that is led by Emanuela and his colleague. That's very important. But we need the will to implement these really doable and actionable recommendations. And in the second and the third chapter of the book, not less valuable, are the transcripts of the people who spoke at the conference, still very current, still very fresh, and of course the report of our activities, including a photo exhibition and others. Thank you very much for this opportunity, Roger.
Thank you very much, Sabir. So as we've heard, the book is a report on our conference in Human Rights Week last year. There are 10 sets of policy recommendations around defending, as we've emphasized, democracy and human rights. And there are transcripts from some of the testimonies and some of the contributions that were given at the conference. I was reading those again actually on the plane on the way here, and they're very, very striking. I mean, there are people who are ambassadors, politicians, civil society activists, academics, with wonderful knowledge and experience, but also with first-hand experience of, there's an account of a person who used to go to Siberia for their holidays, and what happened when the Malaysian plane was shot down, and how first they thought it was a Ukrainian plane, and they realized it wasn't, and how the story changed. And they're recounting that from their first-hand experience. And it's very readable to read these accounts at the end of the book. So we'll come back to Sabir in a moment, but let me turn now to Eric, because as you know, Eric, I mean, we've been talking about Putin and Ukraine, but we're up against a hybrid war, aren't we? We're up against a hybrid war, and the front line of that war is not just the borders of Ukraine. Those borders are quite porous when it comes to cyber attacks, when it comes to fake news, and the spread of false information, the funding of extremism, and so on, and all the things that we've been seeing for years and years and years, and perhaps not really properly woken up to, don't really have a plan to do something about it. It's getting worse and worse, perhaps seeing a bit of an escalation, and then we're starting to see more and more provocation, drones over Poland, military planes over Estonia, interference in elections like Moldova. Perhaps you something about the Moldova election, but it's not just confined to Ukraine, is it? This conflict, and I think that's important to stress that in the context of our book, and why defending democracy and human rights in the rest of Europe is absolutely got to be seen as part of standing up to Putin and defending Ukraine. In defending Ukraine, we are defending ourselves. That's right, isn't it, Eric? That's how
Thank you, Roger. Thank you, Xavier.
Yeah.
I have to say first of all that I'm really happy of this meeting, this small meeting in Santinumi restaurant here, for two reasons. Because it links to the recommendations of the book. First one is to make a network. So we are a member of different and several associations, and it's important to defend democracy, to make network. through association, organization want to defend and promote defend democracy and promote human rights. First, the second is also because it's important. Which one of the recommendation is to organize assembly of citizens, citizen assembly. I mean, it's also important, and I thank Santinumi to welcome us. You know, here in Santinumi, it's a restaurant, a bar in the center of Rome, and where we organize a discussion meeting to speak about Ukraine with Filippo Sensi, as Emmanuel presented him, but also to speak about the future of Europe, of our presence. And it's important not only to be on conference and academic meeting, it's important to make it, but it's also important to go and to speak with citizens who have fears, doubt, questions. And so it's important to go also on the street in a way. So I'm really, and I really agree that it's a recommendation that we must organize assembly of citizens to speak about democracy, human rights, and our challenges. What about you say that absolutely we are under attack? We have internal attack and external attack. Ukraine front lines, it's our front line, but we have to know that there's already the hybrid war. For instance, in Paris, friends of Putin goes to put some head of pigs in front of mosques, or they draw some David stars to provoke, to divide the communities. So there's all kind of provocation to try to divide people and to make people fight instead of collaborate. And so we are under attack, and we are attacked, of course, external, Putin, Xi Jinping, but also the new American administration. Vance went, the Vice President Vance came in Europe to say that to support the far right parties, and he said that, and Donald Trump said that the first enemy of the states is European Union. So that's our challenge. So therefore, by chance, there are some good news. For instance, in Moldavia, that we have seen that if we mobilize, we are able to resist to disinformation and to information war. But we have to be aware that the challenge is very high. I have to say I don't want to make a conference about democracy and so on, but I think that it's important anyway to try to understand also why now we speak about not promoting democracy, as Xavier said, but defending democracy. What happened? What happened in a few years? And I think that we have to understand that the world has changed, and we weren't prepared for that. And that's a big challenge. I think that's, I would be very sure, but I think that the world has changed very quickly, first of all, in a geopolitical point of view. I mean that the West is no longer the indisputed leader of the world. And so it's quite difficult for the population, our population, especially also in Europe, because Europe we're used to be to think that we are the great past. We are countries where we were dominant in the past, and now we discover that the world has changed. In a world of 8 billion of people, and even for the states, the world has changed. It's not. It's obvious that when Donald Trump wins the election, saying "Make America Great Again," it means that there's a sensation, the feeling that it's no more great again. It's no more anymore great. So it's a challenge. So the world has changed. It has changed also in a technical way, with social media, with intelligence, artificial intelligence, which means that all the organization of the world will change. So people are afraid of that. They are afraid about climate change. They are afraid about so many things. They are afraid about equality, more equality, because between women and men. Me too. They are afraid about work situation. Of course, I think that there are some excess. It's going sometimes too far. But there are also legitimate revendication, saying that we want to remember the colonial past and so on. So people are really afraid in front of a world that change. And they have the sensation that there's no more public authority able to face, to deal, to regulate that change. They are afraid. And it's in that fear that the far-right parties, and not only the far-rights, comes and try to use that fear of the people, and also the ultra-capitalist people. They try to push for more inequalities in that situation where people are afraid and they don't know how to react. I say that because I really think that we have also to be concerned that in that situation there are new instruments, and these new instruments are the social media. And the social media is a really big challenge. It has been used, for instance, on the past, for fascists used and Nazi used cinema and radio, the modern instruments at that period. And now the new instruments are social media. So it's necessary to regulate that. But to regulate that, we need a public authority able to do it. And I would have so many things to say, but I want to conclude with 2 points. So it's so important, that book is so important with that, all that recommendation to defend, to resist to the attack against democracy. I think that we have also to focus about the social media. It's important, and then you tell it in the book. The European Union already made some decision, Digital Service Act, to try to moderate in a way, or to stop the hate speech and so on. But we much make more. I think that we have, personally, I think we could promote proposal to say that we have to consider the platform as publishers, as editors, because it's not true that they just host contents. They are like publishers because they choose through the algorithms. They choose to put some information or some position in the first position, and to promote some ideas. And so we should think that platforms are like publisher, and in that way, at editors, in that way, they should have to answer like the press law, and to answer to the obligation of the law. And the second part is, of course, we don't need only to defend, to resist. It's fundamental, and your book is really fundamental. The recommendation also to mobilize, to make each event, to make network, to face, not, and to be aware of that, because a lot of people still are not aware that we are under attack and we are on war. And the second thing, it's why we create also the Europanao Association. It's because we need absolutely to promote, to complete the project of a European Union, a federal union, because it's a condition to get the instruments to act. Our country are not strong enough alone. And it's important, for instance, for Ukraine, our countries, they have to face the things that alone they are not able to defend Ukraine. They need to make a coalition of willing. Even countries like France or England, that they have the nuclear power, they are, of course, they understand they are not enough strong to support Ukraine if they don't make a coalition of winning. So it's important to make to continue to work for federal Europe, because it's a condition to act, to get sovereignty, and to defend democracy and human rights.
Thank you so much, Eric. Thank you for reminding us that we are under attack, that we need to wake up and be aware of that. Thank you for reminding us that we need to organize, and for pointing to some of the recommendations in the book. And I would just add, we also need to have faith in ourselves as citizens. We are citizens, and the world has changed, as you told us, but we can also change, and we can make choices, and we can organize. We can change our behavior. We can engage in acts of solidarity, reaching out. We can not polarize. We can listen. We can work together. We can work between elections for democracy, not just election time. And so I think I'm very grateful to you, because you really explained why the policy recommendations in this book are so important, and particularly those ones that are directed at the citizen, at us as citizens, what we can do, what we can change. The world has changed, and we need to change too. So, Bia, I wonder if you could also say a little bit to us about some of the recommendations in the book,
Sure.
As well as respond to what's been
First,
said.
I want to thank Eric for folding so many pages in the report over there. I can see he was really carefully reading, and thank you so much for your input. Every word of yours deserves to be an annex to this book. Thank you very much for that. And indeed, it's very important to understand that these recommendations are nothing spectacularly new. It's just that we found the ways to present them in a doable way, and I think we've managed so far. One evidence for that is what Eric just said. Indeed, Eric, the 7th chapter says defeating disinformation and countering nationalist propaganda. Those are two spheres that are very well connected, because the disinformation, hybrid warfare strategists use the cheapest tools to gain the highest profits. And nationalism is exactly one of those. Nationalism, racism, or whatever you call it, depending on the society. But those tankers of hate are being used to the highest profit of the enemies of democracy. The other thing is that we need to empower and strengthen civil society. Civil society, media, especially independent media, investigative journalists, internet groups that work on revealing disinformation and propaganda narratives, decoding the coded language that is investing our lives and our spirits and the democracy and the everyday communication between people is extremely needed. And it is exactly time, and this is a criticism for those that decide about budgeting. Culture, media, and civil society are exactly those areas which need to be financed even double now. Because the other side, the tyrants, the dictators, they don't have sense of humor or beauty. They hate truth and facts. They hate what people can bring around the table. And if 4 people sit around the table in a democratic society, sometimes you get at least 4 different opinions. And in a society led by tyrants, one person thinks and all the others obey. They're not allowed to think. That's what civil society is doing, working with people, encouraging them to think differently and to compete with their arguments and evidence and facts, not with hate, lies, and violence. So that's why the governments, those that have money, I come from a country which is small and poor, but those that have power, those that have political culture and, of course, funds, they should support their own media, civil society and culture and arts first, and then give some chance to smaller societies that are now being turned from targets into proxy countries, proxy states of the tyrant in the Kremlin. And of course, the beginning and the end of our thinking and acting in the last years, and not only from 24th of February 2022, but from February 2014, is that Ukraine needs to gain its freedom. It needs to win, because Ukraine's freedom, Ukraine's future, as Roger has put so many times in our podcasts and conferences, is the future of Europe. So we have exactly very easy recommendations on how to help Ukraine not survive, as Olivier Vedrin from Jean Monnet Association would say, but to win. We don't need to survive, we need to live. And in order to live, we need freedom and democracy. And that's it. And those are only the 3 out of 10 chapters of recommendations. Please scan this. I'll also, here is a little bit bigger. I'll share the links under the posts here, so people can read it online from their phones, from their tablets, from their laptops, and please comment on it, and please do something. You don't need to comment to us. Do something in your communities. Do something in your home or in your street or workplace.
Fantastic. So just to remind you, if you're just joining us, watching this at home, coming back from work, I'm Roger Casali from the Defending Democracy Global Initiative. I'm here with the journalist and civil rights activist Zabir Dirallo, who's based in Skopje, North Macedonia, and with Eric Joseph, the French journalist for La Libération and civil rights activist with Europa Now, who is based here in Rome, to present defending democracy and human rights policy recommendations at the Café of the Republic of Europe here, home of Europa Now here in Rome, Café Santinumi. And I think at this point, what I'd like to do is open up our discussion to those of you who are kindly here with us in the room at Café Santinumi. And I know that includes representation from the political counsellor of the British Embassy here in Rome. Lawrence, perhaps you would like to say a couple of words to us and introduce yourself and say a couple of words to us in response to what you've heard.
Let me turn the attention of the technology over to you.
Thanks so much, and thank you, Roger, for the presentation. I think it's a really important topic, and as you know, the UK remains a very robust supporter of Ukraine. I think, as you say, it's really important to understand what we can all do collectively to support as much as we can. Just in terms of your presentation, I think we touched on this briefly, but the challenge of disinformation is clearly kind of one of the major issues having an impact on democracy. I wonder if you could say something, perhaps, in terms of what we can do to sort of strengthen our information architecture and help our citizens and understand, what is true and what isn't. And the second, I wonder sort of going around kind of UK corporation, what we as the UK can do, or what the EU collectively can do to better reach our potential foreign policy and working together.
So that's one question about fake news and the citizens, and a question about foreign policy and the governments, in particular Britain and the EU. And what links the two questions together is, what more can we do collectively? What more can we do together? First, in the fight against disinformation and fake news. And perhaps I can start with you again, Sophia, and then come to Eric, and ask Eric also to comment on the foreign policy aspects, and then I'll respond on the foreign policy aspects as well. So, Sophia, please.
Yes, thank you.
On fake news issue.
Indeed, I heard the question, and it actually contained a little bit of the answer there, especially as it was continued into the second question. Disinformation, fake news, propaganda are tools of the hybrid warfare. And that's one part of the story. Of course, the far right and the power centers, whether they're economic, political, military, or criminal, they use fake news, they use disinformation, they use different ways to sow distrust, polarization, and segregation, and to gain profits. Those can be political, financial, and other types of profits from investing into people's doubts. Disinformation is actually a Russian word, okay, with Latin roots, but it's a Russian device invented about 100 years ago. And it's been developed in fantastic ways, in fantastic ways, in very good ways, very effective ways. Of course, with the end game of sowing distrust and hurting democracy, hurting people, and causing tragedies, and being on the side of the evil, of course. And good and fantastic is the irony over there, but they're really good at that. So when we speak about disinformation, fake news, and all this conglomerate of weaponry of the hybrid warfare, or other far-right extremist, terrorist, or whatever powers that want to harm the other side, so to speak, is well developed. It's supported willingly or unwillingly by the technology, the new technology. They're very good at using technology, and what is the most tragic thing about this is that more and more young people are falling victims of these tools, of these weapons. And the thing is that disinformation is not there to convince you in anything. It's just to cause doubt. It's there to cause doubt in science, in vaccines, to cause doubt in institutions, in justice, to cause doubt in your own army or police, or to cause doubt in other communities that live next door. And then once the doubt is there, it's very easy to direct violence or other ways to distort societies. And that's the weapon. And it's not naive. It's far from benign. it's dangerous, and it's there for a number of years, much longer than EU or other countries, other democratic countries were ready to admit.
That's absolutely the case. And there's much, much more that governments can and must do to counter disinformation, in terms of regulation, in terms of resources and monitoring and so on. But there's also, as someone's pointed to, isn't there, there's a role for the citizen. There's more that the citizen can do. We have a responsibility as citizens, don't we? I mean, there's the old phrase, don't believe what you read in the papers. And now, as you've said, we've got social media. And of course, it's so difficult, isn't it, to know what is true and what is not true, and how to know the difference. But we do have a responsibility, don't we, of citizens? We also need protection. What do you think? What more can we do as citizens in the fight to combat fake news and disinformation?
First, I beg your pardon, but I will speak more now as journalists than as citizens.
Please.
I think there's a good news and a bad news. The good news is, as now with the new instrument, intelligence, artificial intelligence, and so on, people are not able to know what it's true and what it's not, what it's fake. And so I think that in a way, it's an opportunity for journalists to take a new duty. I mean, that there are some people, the people who would like to get some good information, they will say that they will be ready to pay to get the good information, because it's quite difficult now to understand what is true or not. I could make so many examples about that. For instance, the explosion in the door of the jail of Evin in Iran. We have seen the image of the explosion. It was a fake, and Israel said it was true, but also Iran said it was true, because they had some interest different, but it was fake.
Two sides of the same lie.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that the good news. It's that I think that people will choose to pay and to look for good information. And if you see, there are some newspapers that are going better and better. In France, for instance, Le Monde is going well. The number of readers is rising. So I think that's the good news. The bad news is that it's a minority of people who would like to try to get good news. Most of the people, majority will accept to get information which is not completely checked, which is free, which come from social media, saying it's not so important to pay for having a good information. So this is the bad news. And I think that the point is the social media. We have to regulate, to find a regulation about social media. We have really to consider the platform as publishers. If they are publishers, because with the algorithm, they are able to get an editorial line, editorial opinion. They are not free and say the last who spoke is on your screen. No, there are some algorithms, they choose. And so we have to think that they have to be responsible as a newspaper. They have to respond to the law. And I think it's
Eric, I'm sorry, but how responsible? How responsible do you think an owner of a social platform like Facebook or X for that matter, especially, how responsible they would be? Indeed, we live in a world in which you, as an editor, in a media outlet, are not really the editor. The editor is His Highness The algorithm.
The algorithm.
It's the- But how do you think?
Very nice
Really?
conversation. Brief response, because I want you to say something briefly about foreign policy too, but
Yeah,
come back on this very interesting
Sorry.
No, it's very interesting that the owner of the platform knows about the algorithm. He didn't give the algorithm to the public authorities, but
They
he knows
push,
what
and
it
they
is.
push the AFD narratives or
They
the
push it.
MAGA.
So they have to be responsible about what they publish. And so, I mean that if they have to respond on the law of what is published, there can be moderation, but if they don't moderate, if they don't put, and if they don't change the algorithm that push the hate speech, and they know that the hate speech is pushed by the algorithm.
Because it pays.
It
pays. It brings profit.
Of course. So you have to get, but for that you need to get a regulation at high level. I mean that it's not a national country, national government that can make that. So European Union began to start to take some measures and some decisions, but it's not enough. It's not enough. We have completely to change the idea, and I think the platform has to be considered as editor, as publishers.
We're getting short of time now, so perhaps I'll pick up the question about foreign policy and also just comment, if I may, first of all, as a citizen. You've heard from two journalists in relation to the question about what we need to do as citizens. And there's a very famous song by Bob Dylan, whether you know, called Things Have Changed. And there's a line in that where he says, all the truths in the world add up to one big lie. And I think we've heard that a little bit from Eric this evening and talking about Iran and Israel. Everybody has their truth. And there are truths, I'm sure, and there's certainly falsehoods, but there's not always a hard and fast line between truth and false. I think there is a hard and fast line. There's a grey area always, but I think there is a hard and fast line between facts and opinions. And as a citizen, I would like more help to be able to understand what is a fact and what is an opinion. And I think there's also lies, there are dangerous lies. There are lies that, and fake news and deceit that actually touches not only my values. It's frustrating to be have false lies. It leads you to have false beliefs. It can create all sorts of problems with you, but there are also things that are actually dangerous for you. There are things that there are people who are trying to break into your bank account. There are people who can actually damage you directly in terms of your safety and your security. And I think this is where we have to speak to the citizen about the damaging nature of lies and falsehood and deceit, and how that is, how dangerous information, false information can be, so that we wake up as citizens, so we're much more critical about the information that we receive. But I fear that if we just say to people, well, Putin is trying to kind of tell you something that isn't true, people are going to switch off. But if we say to people, well, you need to really be sure when you read things that it is correct, because you might end up with a sort of idea that makes you vulnerable or opens up a risk to your computer being hacked or your bank account being robbed and so on. So we really understand how hard-hitting it can be, and explain also we need to protect citizens from this, but also we need to be reminded as citizens that we have a responsibility ourselves. But I think we need to be helped. I think there's been much more education and much more of a public debate and discussion about that. But we need to strengthen and empower the citizen to do more to help ourselves. And just very quickly on the foreign policy point at the end, I think we're at a time where we've heard it's not about promoting democracy, it's about defending democracy. It's not about MPs necessarily getting together and saying government should be doing something different. I think we know what needs to be done. We need to stand up to Putin, and we need to defend ourselves. We need to take the threat to Europe from Putin's regime very seriously. I'm not saying there's going to be a war tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. I don't know. I'm not an expert. But I am saying that we have to act as if it's coming to us, and it's coming to us soon. We have to put ourselves in Europe in a position where we can defend ourselves against Putin in the case of an outbreak of war. We're not in that position. In fact, we're a very long way from that position. And so we need to inject into I don't think we need to necessarily at this point advise our leaders about what to do. I think we can all plainly see what needs to be done, and the serious responsible leaders can see that. At least that's what I'm hearing from them, and they are getting together to work together to do that. We need to inject a sense of urgency into that. We need to show to our leaders, and I think this is why the role of MPs is so important, that we do understand. We are waking up. We do understand as citizens that we're under attack. We do understand that we're not prepared. And we are ready, are we? Are we ready to make the sacrifices necessary for European defence spending and expenditure to be stepped up to the level quickly enough to be able to have the capabilities in place to stand up to that threat? Are we really ready to do that? And I just say this, we all want more money spent on education, the cost of living crisis is real. But I remember the days when I used to live in West Berlin in the 1980s. And, we also want to be able to rock and roll. We also want to be able to have freedom in our hearts, to be able to express ourselves, to work, to have security, to have democracy, but also to love one another, to live a little, to be free. And when people looked over the Berlin Wall from the east, what they saw in West Berlin was freedom. We need to that cultural aspect as well. We need to remind ourselves and others how good it feels to live in a democracy and with our freedoms. And these are not just abstract concepts. That's what gives us the opportunity to live, to work, to support our families, to be the people we want to be, and to live a little. So let's also remember to live a little and share that with those who would take that away from us, and remind ourselves that we can take nothing for granted, and we are under threat. And we are going to defend ourselves. We are going to defend our lives. We're going to defend our livelihoods. We're going to defend our freedoms. And yes, we are going to defend our right to have a good time. I think on that positive note, I would like, as the moderator, to bring the formal parts of our proceedings to an end. We did promise our audience we would stick to 1 hour, but I'm sure that we can, I know that Eric's got a little bit more time and Tabir and I are here. I hope we can continue to have the discussion informally as well. But thank you very much indeed for your being with us this evening. Tabir.
So I can add a little bit to the second point, or actually the question that you posed. I think we need to consider all this that Roger just said, but we need to understand one thing: that sanctions work well if they're implemented truly. And another point is that Putin is not alone. He is there with Lukashenko. He is there with Xi Jinping. He is there with a number of other proxies that are utterly corrupt and with authoritarian tendencies. And we need to understand that if we in the European Union ban Sputnik and RT, to connect it to the first part, because they're really interconnected. Another thing is that you ban those two war propaganda channels, and then you have Sputnik in Serbian language that is infesting the whole Western Balkans region. And then you go and you shake hands with those that play on both sides, as we call it, or sit on the 4 chairs or 3 chairs and so on. A little less compromises with those that live on the backs of their nations and of the exploitation of fears and abuse or misuse of police and army. Be more direct and implement the sanctions, because you saw the best sanctions against the Russian oil were actually implemented by the drones that came from Ukraine. That was pretty effective measure of sanctions, I think. Thank you.
Wonderful, great, fabulous. So I just finally close by saying that we will be back, I think, in Santa Numi on the 18th of January 2026, which is a Sunday. It's an important day, isn't it? Because it's the day that you will be holding an event on the 18th of January. Could you just mention something about that, and then I'll mention about the event.
The 19th of century.
The 18th of January, you told me, was Miguel.
Because there's a Corsa di Miguel.
Yes, can you just
which is
mention that? Yeah.
which is a run in Rome, 10 kilometers run, and each kilometer is dedicated to a sport, European sport man or woman that embody the European values. Like Vera Kaslaska, the Czech gymnast, like Gino Bartali, who saved Jews during the war, to Victor Perez, who was a French Jewish boxer that has been sent to Auschwitz, and so that's 10 European personalities
Promoting European values.
Embodies the European values. And after, on the evening, we organize.
On the evening, we'll be here at Santa Numi. We will have a Festa dell'Europa. We hope we will have some very short interventions. We will have some jazz music and some dancing, and we will have some lentils from the island of Ventotene, where Altiero Spieni penned the manifesto for Europe, the manifesto, the Ventotene manifesto. That will be an event co-hosted by Europa Now and New European People's Forum, one of the partners of Defending Democracy Global, on the 18th of January 2026. And there'll be many other events from Defending Democracy Global. In the meantime, as I say, we will continue with our European tour of promoting the book Defending Democracy and Human Rights. Thank you so much for being with us here tonight.
Thank you.
At the Café for the Republic of Europe, Café Santa Numi, with Zabir Diralla from Seville, and with Eric Joseph from Europa Now. Until next time, have a lovely evening, and thanks for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for being with us.